Good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us for joining this Flow webinar on creating videos for learning. I'm James McCluckey, and I am the Chief Learning Officer at Flow Learning. I'm particularly excited about this webinar because, unlike previous ones I've done, I literally get to sit back and soak up tips and advice from some fantastic guests who know more about things than I do. So that's quite relaxing for me. So I'll start off by introducing myself properly. So I am James McCluckey, as I mentioned. I've been working in digital learning for about 15 years now. And video has been a fairly significant part of the learning offerings that I've been involved in. I'm joined this morning by some fellow learning professionals from Dishoom, who have very kindly agreed to share their own stories and experiences of creating great video content. So if I could ask you guys to introduce yourselves, maybe in the order that you appear on the screen, starting with yourself, Thomas.
Yeah, of course. Hi, guys. Thank you so much for joining today. I'm Thomas Stroppel. I oversee learning and development within Dishoom. Kind of been working in this sector longer than I care to admit, but so kind of getting on with things. We've transitioned in Dishoom to kind of a bit of a digital approach, which is why it's so great to be here today. But yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
And Sam? Oh, sorry, Austin, you go.
No,
that's fine. You go.
Yeah, hi, my name's Austin Hardiman. I've been working with Thomas on his team for about nearly 3 years now. Yeah, my background is the service industry, obviously, hospitality, but also I was an actor previously and still am. And so, yeah, all those kind of skills we use in our training team. And it's a really exciting time at the moment. So I'm super happy to also be here to share some of it with you guys.
Hi, everyone. I'm Samantha. Hi, I'm Samantha Calandrelli. I'm one of the training managers for Dishoom. We've been working for Dishoom for almost 5 years and a half, and I joined the training team. So I've been working with Thomas and Austin for a year and a few months. And yeah, I've studied hospitality, been working in the industry for 10 years. So I'm happy to be here today.
Thanks, Sam. That's great. Thank you to you all for taking the time this morning to join us. I'll ask you a little bit about what's going on in Dishoom in a second or two. But one thing I'd ask to our attendees here, if you're on Twitter, please do share any comments, thoughts, or reflections by tweeting using the hashtag #FlowWebinar. It's great. Obviously, we're all learning and development professionals. It's great to be able to share some of the knowledge and some of the great tips that Thomas, Sam, and Austin will be sharing with us this morning. So please do, feel free to use the Twitter handle for that. So I'll just run through what we're going to cover with you this morning. We'll start by finding out a little bit about you guys who are joining us this morning. Then Thomas, Sam, and Austin will talk about some of the projects they've been using video for. Before they share some of their top tips on storyboarding, scripting, tech, and lighting setups. And then I'll talk a little bit about videos on a tight budget, which is mostly about using a smartphone. And at the end, hopefully, we'll have a bit of time for a Q&A. But the one thing I would encourage you to do is if you do have questions or comments throughout the session, please do feel free to use the chat, which should be on the right-hand side. To share the questions as you think of them, and we'll try and scoop those up for you. But if we can just start off by finding out a little bit, you guys who are joining us this morning. So just in the chat, if you pop in some details about who you are, where you work, perhaps where your role is. What your role is, and maybe if you've got time, just give us an indication of your current level of experience with video production. It just helps us to perhaps contextualize some of the advice that we're going to give to you. So we'll just give you a minute or two to do that. So we'll just go silent for a bit to give you time to put some of that information into the chat. So I actually can't see the chat because I'm presenting the screen, but Thomas, Austin, and Sam, can you see what's happening on the chat?
Yeah. Hey, Kate, how's it going? Glad you're here.
Okay, thanks to those who have contributed to the chat. Thank you very much for doing that. Hopefully now your fingers are a bit looser because we'll use the chat throughout the session. So please, what I encourage you to do is to chat and interact with each other as the session is progressing. Often the best bit about a webinar is the engagement between the attendees. So please do share questions, thoughts, comments with each other during this hour.
Oh, such a good group. Really,
Good.
it's exciting. Sticks and Sushi, love what you guys do, Tina. You guys are fantastic.
Yeah, Planet Organo. There we go.
Good stuff. So I think what we'll start off by doing then, now to go to the main portion of the webinar, is just find out a little bit about our guests from Dishoom. So what I'll do is I'll remove the slides for this part. So just bear with me a second, so we can see each other. Now, just for anyone who's not familiar with Dishoom, Sam, would you mind just giving a little bit of an introduction to the company, please?
Yeah, sure. So Dishoom is a company that owns 8 restaurants in UK. They're inspired by the old Iranian cafes in Bombay that were opened by the Parsi community at the beginning of the 20th century. And obviously, the reason why they starting opening these Dishooms in London is just to bring these cafes back to life, because obviously there were around 200 cafes at the beginning of 20th century, and then unfortunately they started closing down. So today, if you go to Mumbai, we still call it Bombay, just because we like to refer to the old Bombay. You will only find about 20, so they started closing down. So we just want to we got inspired by these Iranian cafes, and we just want to pay homage to them.
Lovely, thank you very much. I'm sure most people know who Dishoom is, but just to be on the safe side, in case there's one or few people who don't know that, I thought I'd just make sure everyone understands who you guys are. Thomas, if I could start with you, if you don't mind, could you maybe tell us a little bit about some of the projects that you've used video for at Dishoom?
Yeah, of course. So I guess starting last year, after the first lockdown, we really started thinking about how we're presenting content in a different way. We knew we had to reach out to the wider team. As Sam said, we have 8 cafes across the UK. We've also opened a series of delivery kitchens. So kind of for the first time in Dishoom, we've had lots of different cafes that we needed to share content with. I mean, in the old way of doing things, all of our cafes, they would have been, you know, just around the corner from each other. I mean, although we have just a few restaurants in those cafes, we have somewhere around 120 to 150 team members. So they're pretty big restaurants. The restaurants themselves are about 9,000 square feet each. I mean, somewhere between like 150 to up to 500 covers. So they're big old things. And I guess after that lockdown, we said, well, how can we share this information in the best way with all of these teams? And kind of thinking about menu introductions, recognizing that we had some incredible talent in-house, thinking about Austin using some of his acting skills, thinking about putting some of our back-of-house teams in front of the cameras. We just approached it in an old-fashioned way, getting the iPhone out, getting some lights on, and starting to shoot a series of smaller videos and then sharing with them with the teams. But at that point, we didn't really have a delivery method. We didn't have, I guess, really a framework for what those videos were. It was more like having a basic menu update and wanting to share it with the team and then putting it onto our Facebook or sending it in an email chain or creating a private Vimeo page. Now we've kind of changed considerably. So going out of this lockdown, we've taken that video approach, but we've really we've put on steroids. So we've overtaken one of our cafes. We've been here for 9 weeks and we've shot something to the effect of 100 videos. We've had something like 31 days on site filming, which for anybody out there who's ever worked in film and television, the feature film usually is about 27 days of training, 27 days of filming. So at this point we're making Batman the movie, so it's a pretty big one. But yeah, so we've got that, and just, I mean, content from all different sectors of the business. So behind the bar, back of house, having some of our head operations team come in to be talking about what they do. So yeah, kind of quite diverse where we're at now.
Fantastic. And Austin, could you maybe give us a bit of insight into why you guys specifically chose video as your content delivery mechanism?
Sure. Well, I think first of all, sort of different ways of learning. Obviously, there's the hands-on practical side of it. So if we're training someone about the food, we would obviously do a session on the food. We maybe get the food out onto the table and talk about it, the specifics of the dishes. But bringing video is just an added benefit. It's almost another layer of learning, because I find personally when I watch something, I take in a lot more, and also video is just a great tool for sort of getting a message out and a story out to as many people as you can. And obviously, as our team grows, we want to give them as many of these tools as possible. So video is a great way in. I think Thomas might talk about it, but it's about 45 seconds or 30 seconds of video content, but it's got key messages in it and key points, and it's really accessible to our wider team.
Great, thank you very much. And so Sam, what kind of topics are you actually covering in your videos then? What kind of subject matters?
So it was obviously all our menus, so all the food menu, all the drinks. We got separate menus for breakfast, desserts, and all day. Then all the drinks. We covered all the steps of service, the SEVA, which is basically all our values and the company culture, and everything that we thought could be useful for the team, especially after how many months of lockdown. I think they needed a refresher. Pretty much everything.
The post-lockdown thing is interesting. Are you finding it, because obviously you talked about video being a great way of getting stories across, but that kind of personal touch, I could imagine that it's invaluable for that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think also we've been posting cool like quizzes and videos and things like that on our Facebook group, just as a way to kind of keep the team connected during lockdown. And I think it also just kind of gave us that reinforcement that, video is a great way to keep people connected and informed. So.
And I think, so Thomas, have you got any kind of obviously we're going to talk about some specific top tips that you've prepared for us, but in terms of, kind of key lessons learned or a video that you're more, or a video project you're most proud of, what would you want to communicate to the guys listening this morning?
Yeah, it's a good one, James, actually. I mean, I'm just kind of looking through the comments, and it seems like we've got kind of a wide range of experience on the call today. People who are really brand new to video. We've got some people who are kind of heading up L&D for different businesses, kind of in different sectors as well, hospitality as well as restaurants and hotels, all sorts of things. So I mean, I guess the key takeaway, just as a way to approach digital content for me, is really trying to understand how video fits into your business, and really how it adds on top of what you're already offering for your L&D solutions. Because kind of as Austin said, I think we're fortunate because, in the UK before COVID, we all cared so much about helping our teams grow and develop, and most of us, we had these programs in place, and it was kind of the old school way, or maybe it was the first way we thought about it, but it was that face-to-face training, and really taking that time, dedicated wine trainings, and getting people in the room to learn about management programs. And that's been turned on its head, and I think we'll probably be going back to that in some form, but we now have this other thing that's been added, which is Zoom, which is what we're doing now, all these webinars, but also this digital approach. And I think you can't sacrifice the old approach, which is that face-to-face learning, that face-to-face interaction, because we are in hospitality. That's what we do at the end of the day. And if we don't find ways to practice those skills and double down on how we engage with people in the room, I think ultimately it won't translate through to that guest experience. So I say all of that because whatever we do with video, it has to be above and beyond what we were doing before. We can talk about some of the culture, some of the food, some of those drinks, but in a way, for us in hospitality, it has to live in the here and now. It has to be a tool that they can access on the floor, that they can really dip into when they need it, and they can learn it in something quick and easy kind of way. If it's too much, if it's too unwieldy, ultimately we're giving them a tool that they'll never be able to use. And if we push all of our learning into that format, it's just unwieldy, because we're preparing them to do something that they actually won't be doing in our restaurants and in our hotels and all around. So that's the key thing. If we know how it fits within the business and really how it accents all of those other things that we're already doing, then we can double down, make something new, innovate within form. And I think that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, Austin, you mentioned, was it 30 to 45 seconds is kind of the optimal length of your videos. I must confess myself, because I've made a lot of videos, and I actually cringe when I think back of some of the 20-minute epics I forced learners to sit through. So I was kind of cringing slightly when you said that there. But yeah, certainly now we aim for around about a minute. But do you have any tips for that editing? Because the thing I found quite a struggle sometimes, and I know a lot of people struggle with, is that kind of over-informing, and is what are your editing guidelines in terms of, right, that stays, that goes, or we can maybe think about using that for something else?
Well, I think Sam might go into a bit about the script development side of it, but I think the editing is easier once you've followed a scripted kind of format, so that, because I think sometimes you go into making a video and you go with loads of ideas, and what you come out with is almost too much, or it just doesn't kind of fit together. So and I used to do that actually, but having worked out that, using a script as a guideline, storyboarding, things like that, these are key things to help you in the edit. And then also, if something has happened within the shooting, within the material that you have, and during the edit, you can add a bit of pizzazz using music or something like that. I think that's great. But I would say keeping it scripted, knowing what you want to say, simply beginning, middle, and end, and then kind of being really strict with yourself on that development, keeping it as simple as you can, will allow you to get to where you need to be in the edit. I think, Thomas, you may want to add to that.
Yeah, no, I think it's right. I mean, it's the pre-editing, right? Because we always think, well, let's shoot everything, and then at the end, then you have to cut it down. And frankly, we don't have any time. So I mean, the more work you can do before you even get there, I think you're just helping yourself.
Yeah. The preparation is always a key thing, and actually, I'll talk about that a little bit later on when we talk about filming on a budget. That preparation part can certainly save you a lot of pain in the post-production process. But what we'll do is, I think I've got a few more questions for you, which we'll pick up after your tips section there. So let's get the slides back up again. So just bear with me while I do this. I always make these things look so seamless.
You're doing great. You're doing great.
Thank you. That's very kind. Can you see my screen okay? Yep.
Yeah.
Great. So you guys have got some tips for us, and that was an almost seamless segue into how to write a storyboard. So if I could get one of you guys just to run through your tips on this for us, please.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, so for us, because of time and money and things like that, you kind of want to work out what's the ideal way of making a video. What do you want to say? And if I had loads of budget, what would I want to do? So you could storyboard to that, and then so what we did is we had a version 1, version 2, version 3 kind of ideal kind of storyboard in terms of what we wanted to say. But I think basically, if you don't know what a storyboard is, it's simply the story of what you're trying to say. So and using images to create that story, so that you can then create a shot list from it to film, if that makes sense. Storyboarding is essential because it just gives you an idea of kind of what you want to say, a bit of visual clarity as well, and it also can sort of allow you to understand how long a video might be. So yeah, kind of what I was saying before, beginning, middle, and end. Like, you need to know what you're going to say. So I think we had a shot list for a pav bhaji, one of our small plates that we serve, and literally we started storyboarding it with the simple image of the dish in the beginning, and then copying and pasting an image of myself, and that kind of as the presenter, and then kind of a couple of shots of the dish again, but saying what you wanted to say about it, like the story, where did the dish come from, and then another shot of what's in the dish, and then how the dish is presented and garnished. And then so pictures to tell the story of that. And basically you then have a pretty good idea of what it's going to look like. Yeah, and then you create a shot list from that, and you can basically use that as a guideline in terms of when you're filming, so that you know you've got everything that you need, and also in the edit you can sort of use that as a guideline to cut together the footage that you've taken. So storyboarding is really important because, like I said before, it's very easy just to go in and start doing things, but there's no structure and there's no organization to what you're trying to do. So you can actually get quite lost. And what people don't understand is when you do actually go into filming, there's so many other things going on during that shoot day that without a storyboard to kind of bring you back to focus, time just will disappear. So if you are working on a budget, you know, that the risks of sort of losing track of time and things, and obviously the problems that come up during a day of filming, you kind of need the storyboard as your guideline.
Yeah.
Can I just ask you, so just a couple of logistical things then when it comes to storyboarding. So how many people typically get involved in the storyboarding process for one of your videos?
It's a good question, James, because I would say from tip to tail, we will make the first pass of that storyboard. And a lot of it, especially for us in hospitality, is you're shooting content that might change down the line. So for example, Austin mentioned the pav bhaji. You might be talking about the ingredients and the garnishes today, but in 6 months' time, there may be a menu update so that you see something a bit different. Yeah, so this is the, Austin mentioned V1 of kind of our storyboard. So for this idea of kind of seeing what the title card is, talent there in the first frame, all the way through the different shots, taking you through the timing and how we interact with that. So I mean, within that process, James, there's our team coming on board. There's the person who's actually running the camera, in this case an iPhone, just to be sure what we can shoot. We'll be making sure, kind of touching base with, you know, chefs to make sure that we have all the garnishes and specs right, touching base with our marketing team to make sure that we're not saying any big clangers that we don't want to be saved forever on the internet, and just making sure everything looks good. So I mean, even to get it to the place where we're ready to shoot that final version with lights and the camera and everything, I would say there's definitely, what, 5, 6, 7 people, Sam? Quite a few.
And I think people sometimes are quite surprised by that, aren't they? They think it's just like a 20, 30 second video, and there's not, you just get your camera out and you just film it. But actually there is to make it look so slick, and to get that 20 or 30 seconds to actually work the way it's meant to, does take an awful lot of effort to ensure it does what it needs to do. That kind of reminds me when I first started in e-learning, and then, you know, I'd go to clients and, you know, they'd want a 1 hour e-learning course, and they would say, well, how long would it take to produce that? And I'd say, roughly, you're talking about 2 to 3 months. And they were always aghast. How can it take that long? But actually, when you break it down into all the component parts and what has to happen, it very quickly becomes clear why you have to put that effort into it to make it look effortless, I guess. So just staying on the logistical side of things, and obviously it's been a bit easier because of lockdown, because of venues have been closed down. But if it was now we're all reopening, what would your recommendation be for making these videos in terms of the location? Would you do it in the venue when it's closed, or do you actually prefer it when it's there's a bit of ambient noise there? What are your thoughts on that, guys?
It's a really funny one, James, because I mean, lockdown's fortunate. I mean, all of us right now, we're in our Covent Garden branch, so you can see the cafe behind us. So until the 17th, this restaurant's closed. So we took over this 9 weeks ago as our, you know, production studio, which is a major benefit. So we were filming a lot of the individual sessions where we're talking to camera here, and then for some of the other shots, we would go to the cafes where the kitchens were actually making food so that we could get those inserts. So I mean, it's a funny thing because ideally, whatever you film, you would want to be sure that it was as clean as it could be without any distractions. So, you know, you see the light changing on my light as cars and things drive by, but you would just want to have that consistency in place. But for the finished version, because we were shooting in a cafe where there's not much happening, we actually ended up going in and adding in some restaurant sounds just to bring it to life a little bit. Because again, I mean, these can't live in a COVID, you know, time vortex. We have to look at them in 9 months and say, okay, these still look and feel like Dishoom. And if there's no restaurant sounds, if there's nobody there, it does kind of feel like we're in a bit of a, I don't know, in a time warp somewhere. So I think that's important. The other thing that, just while this shot list is on the screen, I think that's kind of important is, you know, if you see the first slide there, the basic content delivery, that black box, again, it's just a simple title, building some things in PowerPoint, exporting them to your editing software. I see some chat here kind of through the side. I see Alex asking about editing. Like whatever app that is, whether it's Vegas Pro or Premiere Pro, which is what we're using, you can just drop these slides directly and it just export it as a PNG. Next picture, you see Austin looking like a hunk there, kind of with his hair all cool before COVID. I mean, this is that session that we do in a cafe. Yeah. I'm not saying it is. But so this one is that kind of that face shot again. And this shot is maybe what, Austin? Less than 10 seconds long?
Yeah.
Everything else after that is in a cafe where we can actually put things on the table. So if there's background sound, it doesn't really matter because we're just using some voiceovers to tell us the details. We're getting the insert shot of the food coming in. So we're trying to build these videos in a way that we can do as much as we can away from the cafe, get the voiceovers, make sure everything is as clean as it can be, but also trying to build them in a way that's future-proofed. So should that garnish on the pav bhaji change or the recipe, for the most part, we just need to update that voiceover, which we can do in our head office and lock ourselves in the bathroom with a voice recorder and just get that audio. So, yeah.
So I'm just curious, what was the hair, makeup and wardrobe budget for Austin's shot there?
Whoa. I think we did order a few shirts because Thomas was like, we needed some extra variations, but it wasn't very much.
But it looks very expensive, sir. So the finished product turned out well. But yeah, just a slightly geeky question for me. Then, so you mentioned there about adding the ambient sounds of the restaurant. So how did you do that? Did you have previous footage that you then cut over the top of it? Did you take the audio track from, or did you buy it from an audio library? How was that done?
Yeah, good question. So we're fortunate because, you know, I mean, we just live in a time where there's information at our fingertips just to Google search away. So, I mean, a lot of these things, you can find free usage like restaurant sounds that you can rip it, you can download it, drop it in as you see fit, which is really awesome. There's lots of, you know, stock image libraries and things should you need to find certain things, all of which you need to make sure are culturally appropriate. So, I mean, we can't really drop a lot of things into Dishoom because it's very specific, but for some things you can find them just that search away. And equally so in terms of music and usage. I mean, all of us on this call, I mean, in restaurants and hotels and things, we have music that we play. There's licensing agreements in place. So yeah, I mean, the foundation is there. So it's just kind of seeing what levers you can pull and what content is at your fingertips already.
Great, thank you. Right, so that was storyboarding then. So you've got some tips for us for scripts. Can I just ask one of you to, just so everyone's clear, how would you define the difference between a storyboard and a script?
So I would say, so the storyboard is what you see on camera, so basically the video, and then you got the scripts, which is the things that the talents are going to have to say in front of the camera. So what we did, so at the beginning, we created the first draft of the script, and then we realized that probably we weren't really the right people to do the script, in the sense that obviously we are trainers, but we needed the opinion, we needed the inputs from people that work in the cafes every day. So we asked all our GMs of all the cafes to give us some some feedback to tell us if we were missing something. So basically, we shared our first draft with all the GMs, area manager, the marketing team, just to make sure that the language we used was the right one, and that, again, that we weren't missing anything. After that, obviously, we had a lot of information, so we had to start cutting and just make it a little bit more slim, just to make sure that we had only what was essential. So basically, what we thought, what is that one piece of information that we want the team to remember? So we just left the most important things. After that, obviously, we had to consider the fact that our talents weren't all like Austin. Like, obviously, they were actors, right? And most of them, they have never been on in front of a camera. It was their first time. So we had to consider that, and also the fact that for most of our talents, English is not even the first language. So obviously, most of them were like head chefs, head bartenders, bar trainers. So it was a bit, we had to make sure that the script was simple, easy to remember, and we also did that. We also used voiceovers. So obviously, what we did, we shot like the first few seconds with the talent, with talking in front of the camera. So we gave them just a few lines to remember, to make sure that they could memorize them like straight away, and then they could just focus on the execution in front of the camera instead of trying to remember all the whole script. And after that, thanks to the voiceovers, we were able to insert images in the videos. So in this way, we actually created the right atmosphere. We told the story about the drink or the dish, again, just using the right images. And after that, we also thought, okay, how are we going to make sure that in the future, if I'm pretty sure that all the other, all the restaurants, they have menu updates at least twice a year, right? So we had to make sure that in the future, if we have to do a menu update, we don't have to shoot everything again, because it's really time consuming. It's very time consuming. So we just made it in a way that if there is a menu update, or we're gonna just have to do one voiceover, or just shoot the first part of the video, or just shoot one scene about the garnish, and etc. And then the last thing that we had to keep in mind at every stage of the process of creating the script, and it's probably the most challenging one, is that at every stage we had to make sure that the script and the video was accessible to the whole team, in the sense that we had to do it in a way that it was accessible to a host or a bartender, a food runner. So we had basically to constantly shift our hats from a trainer hat to a host hat, a bartender hat, food runner hat, because obviously they all have different level of knowledge, right? Obviously, for example, a food runner has a very basic knowledge about the drinks compared to the one of a bartender. And also one thing that I have already mentioned is the language, right? So some of the team members, they barely speak English. For others, English is it's the second language. So it was just, we really had to make sure that language and level of knowledge was accessible to everyone.
Thanks, Sam. There's a couple of things to just to pick up on there that really resonated with me. Is that certainly both about the last point you made, that thing about making sure that it's that one size fits all, which is a cliche, but trying to produce content or resources that resonate with everyone I think is a challenge, regardless if you're doing a video or a piece of e-learning or an animation or a podcast or what have you. It's always really difficult to try and accomplish that. So, like, obviously everyone's been talking about storytelling. Austin mentioned storytelling early on. So you put storytelling in a lot of learning design, but, sometimes the story doesn't resonate with people and it takes them out of it. Sometimes the scenario that you pick is one that some people are not familiar with or they don't relate to. So, yeah, I think it really sells the point that video's got all these benefits, but when it comes down to it, when you are producing a piece of video content, you should think of it the same as any learning resource. That, you know, some of the same challenges do apply there. In terms of what you mentioned there, Sam, about the English not being a first language, how did you guys get over that? Did you was it trying to keep the script simple, or did you use subtitling? What was your solution to that?
Yeah, so obviously we try to keep the script as simple as possible. Obviously, English is not my first language, so as soon as I saw that things were getting a little bit complicated, I was immediately, you know, flagging, guys, I think maybe we could change that. And also we are considering also to add subtitles. So I'm not sure if Thomas wants to add something about this, because
yeah. So we found somebody, a company in America that adds subtitles to it. So we're looking into getting these dropped into it, which kind of serves two purposes, actually. The first one is just making sure that everybody can listen to it, but also to read the content. But it kind of is that other thing, because if these videos are 30 to 40 seconds long, everybody has access to these in their back pocket if they just open their iPhone. It means that you can watch the videos without any sound on, so you can actually see it in real time and just read it as you're going through. So in a way, then you open yet another door into learning. So it doesn't have to be that full experience. It could just be maybe a lighter experience. So yeah.
Sure. Thanks, Thomas. Okay, well, let's move on to then some of your guys, your tech tips then. So this is probably looking quite scary and formidable to some people. So it'd be nice if you could break that down for them.
Cool. Do you want me to?
Yeah. Go for it,
okay.
Austin. This is all yours.
So this is what we would call your basic kit that you would need. Just to quickly say also the storyboard and the script, if you go online and you look, you can find a basic template for either of those things. So like Thomas was saying, Google, you know, that we've got the information. So don't be too overwhelmed if you don't know what a script is or storyboard. Just it's there for you to go check out. And the same, I guess, for your kit, because it's very daunting. Like I to be honest with you, although I have experience in front of the camera, I have a low-level experience behind the camera, which I had to upskill myself, and with the guidance of Thomas as well. But choosing like the equipment was quite. It took a bit of time to do some research, but this is what I got to, and the Rode mics are the things in the middle. So you need good, decent lighting, good sound, and you need equipment that's going to look after your camera. So the tripod is really important. But I think we used a company that sounds German, Newer, but it's actually a Chinese brand for the tripod, and that came in around 110 pounds or something. There's probably better ones out there. There's also probably worse, of course, but that was kind of the budget I used for the tripod. The mics were more expensive. I think they came in at around 300 pounds, but they really are great. They're wireless. They plug straight into an iPhone. And that was kind of the key, because we decided to use the iPhone 11 Pro to do all our videos on, for accessibility and for our first sort of inroad into creating content. It was just easy to use. Who's to say what we're going to use in the future? But I think just making the start is important, because then you can start to learn and see what works and doesn't. The lighting system on the left, I think, came in at maybe 150, and basically it's box lighting. They're really, really great. We also had some LED lighting units as well, for just to add some extra light into the big spaces that we have at Dishoom. Yeah, and again, you know, using Thomas's experience as well in terms of filmmaking, but this is kind of all you need in order to get started. So once you get to this point and you buy it, then you're ready to go. And I would just watch as many sort of like training YouTube videos as you can about how to set up lighting. I noticed someone commented that it takes a long time. It can take a long time, but once you've set up that shot, and we used certain locations within the cafe 3 or 4, and we just alternated the different videos in these places using the same lighting setup. So we used tape. You can get some marking tape, and we just taped the positions of where the lights stood, and we used those throughout the 6 weeks. So it saved a lot of time, but it does take a bit of time to set up and make sure you're in the right space. But that's the equipment you need. These lav mics are great. You know, it's so easy and free, and it goes straight into the phone. One thing I would maybe choose to do next time is maybe just to get a better tripod, because this particular make wasn't exactly the best. It actually had a fault, and so I would think about getting a really decent tripod.
Yeah, we're looking for sponsorship.
Yeah. But yeah, no, that's it. To be honest, I mean, did you want me to go into more details, or does that help?
Yeah, no, that definitely helps. I think what we'll probably do is we'll move on to the next part, and then if anyone's got any questions specifically about the tech, and actually the production on a budget that I'm going to mention kind of touches on some of this stuff a little bit. So yeah, I think maybe if you just hear that part, and then if people have got questions off the back of that, then that would be great. But thank you, Austin, for that. That was really, really helpful. And then you've got something here about the lighting setup. It would be nice to hear a bit about that.
Yeah, this is a beautiful diagram, isn't it? It's just really nice. So, I mean, in the comments, I see HIT training. I love you guys. Totally true. I think consistency, irregardless of whatever you do on camera, is most important. A consistent script, a consistent audio level, consistent light from video to video. Because again, you've got to think that the team is going to be watching these in succession. It's not one video and then they go do what they're doing. You're watching like 15 of these things back to back. And if something's out of place, you're going to switch off as a learner. So key thing in the middle, subject, we've got the blue box in the middle. I think the good thing about those two softbox lights that we have is that they're built for kids. So when you turn them on, they stay on the entire time. You can kind of point them at the person that you want, which is great to light it, but it also means you don't have to get them perfect. So if it's kind of pointing behind them, it doesn't make too much difference. There's two different kinds of lights. On the right, you've got the main source light and the fill on the other one. So we do it dead simple. So main, just set it back maybe 10 feet, point it at the person, switch it on, you're good to go. The fill light, again, keep it about 10 feet away, but instead of pointing it directly at them, you can point it at the ceiling. Just keep it simple. Balance everything out with what you're seeing on that camera screen when you have it there. If you've got that right, you've got the audio set up and it's clean audio and you don't have the rubbishman coming in to take out things, you'll be fine.
Thanks very much, Thomas. So it's interesting listening to you speak there, because I'm going to talk a little bit about advice on shooting video content on a budget, because I know a lot of people will be on a fairly tight purse string. So I think it's important to cover that. So obviously you guys talked about shooting on a smartphone, which is great. So we're going to continue on that theme just now. Because I'm not actually sure that everyone would be aware that actually you can produce some pretty great looking footage just using the device that we all have in our pockets. What I'm going to do though is focus on talking heads interviews, as that is what perhaps most people here would be using a smartphone to record. Now, originally, my friend Dr. Mark Davis was going to run through this bit with us, but I'm afraid Mark actually had to go on a filming trip, and now we can't deny him that his business is successful and he has to go off and earn some pennies. But Mark very kindly has agreed to let me run through some of his top tips. He's actually a real guru of both producing great looking videos on a smartphone and also for creating videos that are specifically about learning. So I'll be running through some of his main tips for making videos inexpensively using a smartphone, and I'll add a few things I've picked up along the way, along with his suggestions. Now, firstly, lighting is very important. Our friends from Dishoom here talked about lighting, but I'll just add a few things to that, which seem so obvious that you forget to think about them because they are so obvious. So basically, if you're shooting in a room, the setup can have a dramatic effect on the final look, but just doing simple things like, closing the curtains can make a big difference. Curtains give you control over continuity. Many people forget about the impact that just the weather can have on a shot. So if you're filming over an hour or two, the light outside can change, which can mean an inconsistent look. Also, the guys touched upon that there. You don't actually have to spend a fortune on lighting. You'll notice at the back of Mark there, his light there is not, even though it looks like a tripod, it's a furniture light. And he's got, other lights dotted about the room. But, just having some lights on can make a huge difference. And you can see there basically the difference between the two shots here. The first one has the curtains open and no lights, but the second one, just by closing curtains and having a few lights on, has made an immeasurable difference. What we'd say, though, about lighting is when you put lights on, just make sure that they're positioned in such a way that they don't cast shadows. And another tip is it's a good idea not to have a window directly behind you, because it can create a pretty horrendous looking level of darkness and shadows. So that's just some basic tips about lighting on a budget. Sorry, Mark's going to kill me for this. This is not the most flattering shot, so please don't grass me up. But anyway, so obviously composition is hugely important. So this one here, the shot is too close, and actually what it does, it misses what you can capture with a wide shot. So if I go back to the previous shots here, you can see there's a bit of detail there. There's a bit of character to the background. And also, by going in so close, it misses things like, someone using their hands. Hand gestures can be very expressive and can get points across with a lot of extra feeling. If the shot is too close as well, it can go out of focus. Now, close-up shots are fine if you're able to vary them with longer shots, but having it too close consistently isn't the best. And also you can see as well that the shot is not straight, which is distracting. So you have to find some way of stabilizing the phone. So it could be a tripod, or it could be propping up against something, which is not ideal. But if you are on a budget, you just have to find some way of stabilizing the phone. And a couple of other things to think about as well is bad shot composition. If the camera is too low, you're basically going to see up your subject matter's nostrils, or if it's too high up, it could be an unnatural pose. I know everyone these days is all into the selfies from above. That's fine for a photograph, but for an interview, which you're going to watch over the course of a minute, it can look very, very unnatural. So just the final point then about the phone, just try not to hold it when you're filming, because it can make sure it can actually cause the picture to jerk. Third point is consider your audio setup, and obviously the guys talked about this. It's very important. So what some people do is they make do with just the mic on their phone, but there's a lot of variables there which could mean the sound is poor, including the room itself, which could make the sound incredibly echoey. And if you're doing a wide shot, the further away the phone is from your subject, the worse the sound quality is likely to be. So it's worth investing in a small lapel mic. Austin talked about the mics that those guys were using. So the one that I'm showing here plugs straight into the iPhone. It costs around about £15, so it's not expensive, but it's not going to be the best mic in the world, but it will make a very positive difference to your sound quality. Just when you are buying a microphone, just make sure the connector is compatible with your phone of choice. This is something which a lot of people are guilty of, and Mark is very passionate about this being his classic #1 mistake, which is film landscape, not portrait. By which we mean holding your phone on its side like a rectangle, so like this as opposed to like this. All video playback services play videos landscape, so there's really not much you can do retrospectively to fix it if you accidentally film it in portrait. So the streaming services tend to do things like putting distracting elements like blurs down the side so it'll fit in the rectangle. And it's a hard habit to break, because obviously most of us go through our lives holding our phones like this when we're texting and on Facebook and Instagram and what have you. But you can really see the difference here to the actual final shot itself. So it is really worth setting up your little reminders to do that. The next thing is to have a marker. Now, something some people forget is the positioning of a subject. So just because the person on screen is sat in one place for one take, they might adjust themselves. They might get up to go to the loo. They might request a longer break. And then when they come back, they don't sit where they were before. So you could end up with footage like this. So if you are aiming for those 30-second clips, you can see how distracting that would be. And Thomas was mentioning about consistency earlier on there. So having a marker where your subject matter sits is very important to ensure that continuity is maintained. And just the last point I'm just going to make quite quickly is, because I think personally it's quite crucial, is to think about your content. So sometimes, especially if we're just starting out with video, we're so focused on the setup, we forget that what we're actually producing is a piece of learning content, and it has to function like that. So first thing to think about is, what's the purpose of the video? What outcome does it have to meet? So by watching it, a learner should feel equipped or inspired to try and do something as a result of watching it. So a video is no different from any other learning resource in that respect. Secondly, don't be afraid to ask your interviewee, to do multiple takes. So it's very rare someone gets it right first time. So 9 times out of 10, getting the interviewee to try it 3 or 4 times results in them saying something more focused and with less waffle. So if they're using a lot of words to get to the main point, there's a higher chance that point will be missed by learners. So it's a bit like an e-learning course I mentioned before. If an e-learning course is stuffed with information, the key learning could be missed due to all the traffic round about it. So the more succinct you can get the information, the better. Now, next, something, and this was a massive surprise to me when I first started doing videos about 10 years ago. I was filming a bunch of teachers, and very accomplished teachers who were used to standing up at conferences and used to standing up in front of classrooms and very confidently presenting verbally. But, your speaker might actually be nervous. And the number of times I worked with confident, capable people that have fallen apart as soon as a camera starts rolling has been quite a surprise to me. So, do what you can to prepare them for the environment they're going to be filming in. If you can, send them a photograph of the setup. If the setup's quite professional, some people get very surprised when they walk in, when they see the lights and the camera, because they're not expecting it. So if you can prepare them for that, that's time well spent. If the speaker if you can send them the questions, any questions you have in advance, then they can have a think about their answer or talk through their answers with you. And that can help with the second point I made there about, the waffle and trying to get the messages being quite succinct. And the last point I'd make just on your content is be flexible with your footage. So, often I start off with an idea for a video, but when I see the footage, it's not quite how I planned it. And sometimes this is positive. It can be positive. Maybe I've got 2 videos out of the footage when originally I only thought I'd have 1. Or sometimes if I've interviewed a few people, I find it's better to do a compilation of interviewees rather than the individual videos I had originally planned. So just be open-minded with the footage that you get. Whatever is best for the learning points to get across is that's the main purpose of the video. So just be open-minded with what you have. So these points, with a little bit of embellishment for me, all came from Mark. So consider your lighting, get your shot composition right. Consider your audio setup, film landscape, not portrait, have a marker, and think about your content. But what I would encourage you all to do is to sign up to get access to Mark's free resources. So smartphonevideorevolution.com/free. So he covers the 6 points that I went through there in more detail, and he adds a lot more kind of texture and context to those points. He also provides separate videos on things like the settings you should use on your phone to make sure your footage is the best it can be. And he also provides things like kit lists that you can refer to make sure you've got the best accessories for smartphone filming. So yeah, I'd really encourage you all to sign up to that site there. And there's also a Facebook page that goes along with it where you can actually ask Mark questions directly. So it's well worth your time. If you're serious about using smartphone for video footage, it's well worth your time having a look at those resources that Mark provides. So a big thank you to Mark for letting me share those tips with you guys today. So we'll go on to some questions in a second or two. So let me just come out of the presentation and come back to the main part here. So I'll have a read through and see if there's any questions in the chat just now. But if not, please feel free to leave some, right away. But one thing I'd ask you guys, from your experience, is there anything, any subject or any time you think video is not appropriate to use as a learning mechanism?
It's a good question. It's a really good question. I think one thing that's important is it has to be something that people have an appetite for, and you have to encourage that appetite for people to come back and consume the content. So, I mean, if you know that when you look at something, it's going to be long, clunky, it's going to be a difficult session just to even go through. I'm just thinking about, I don't know, like fire procedures or a very detailed COVID order of service. I mean, of course we can do that, but you're going to set everything against you just for success in terms of creating it, but also there's already a buffer to the team going in and understanding it. So you need to know what's best face-to-face, what you can send over in docs, and also kind of what's short and sharp that they can just take right away. Yeah. What do you guys think? What do you think, Sam? Austin? It's a tough question, actually.
I think it depends. Yeah, like, you know, all those things you were saying, but also what is there a time to, I think you naturally, like, learning is continuous, like, so there's different, you're always, face-to-face learning is always going to be really value add, and it needs to continue, like you were saying earlier, Thomas, because there's just something about face-to-face contact and the tangible sort of being in the room with people. I think that's really, really key. So I don't know. I mean, I guess when we get out of COVID and we can have sort of people in a room in a big way again, there is something, you know, if those opportunities come up, then definitely that should be the choice. It's the face-to-face kind of training sessions, which I always, you know, I think we're going to be doing less of as in trainers at the moment, but it's always such a great thing to be involved in a training session. Yeah. I'm always blown away when someone's there and talking and it's live. It's like being in a show, isn't it? So I guess when those opportunities are there, you should go for it. But I think video is it's a really great way to do all the other things that you need to do as a team, and to get content out quickly to people as well. I think in terms of tangible learning tools and things like that.
Do you guys kind of Sorry,
I just wanted to add that, in my opinion, so videos are really useful if we want to help the team to expand their food and drinks knowledge, for example, whereas maybe a face-to-face training session works better if you want to help the person to develop, you know what I mean, to kind of get this person ready to step up, probably like, you know, another position, or so it's different. I would always think, what am I trying to teach, and what would be most useful for this team member? So, and then I would choose, you know, if make a video or just go for a face-to-face training session.
Yeah.
Great stuff. Thank you all very much for that. So my producer is doing that Oscars thing of the conductor waving the big stick, saying, you know, wrap it up. So there's quite a few points being made there in the chat, and a couple of questions. Just very quickly, Tarla's asking about the Flow platform and getting the videos out to learners. Did you guys? How are you getting the videos out to your colleagues?
Yeah, well, I mean, I know Flo's been doing a bunch of work just thinking about how you guys are rethinking presenting learning to team members. So there's a piece within that allows that video content to be hosted. So I mean, you can obviously currently assign learning content just uploading one video at a time or putting them together as sections of content. So yeah, that's the end goal. But yeah, we're also kind of sharing them with the team in a bit, just a quicker way, just to make sure that we can get them, because we're reopening on the 17th. It's just around the corner. So yeah, all the channels possible that we can.
Scary, not scary times, exciting times, but I'm sure it's tense times as well. But yeah, just thank you for that lovely segue, Thomas, that, you know, at Flow, we are redeveloping we are doing some work on our platform just now to make it much easier to share kind of video content, you know, audio content, etc. So, you know, look out for more news on that. But listen, all it remains me to say is a massive thank you to Thomas, Sam and Austin for joining us this morning and for being so generous with the time, especially considering how pressured and precious their time is at the moment with the reopening happening. I found that really interesting, guys. So thanks for sharing your stories with us. And thank you to everyone who joined us this morning to hear what the guys had to say. about how they're using video. I found it a really worthwhile hour. So thank you all very much for your time. I hope you
Thank
have
you
a
so
good
much,
day.
guys.
Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care,
Cheers,
everyone.
guys.